This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers.
Dreamcast, up to 6 billion players.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Why don't we play together?
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
Please stop this disc now.
Welcome back, dear listeners, to another episode of the Dreamcast Junkyard DreamPod. We have an absolute scorcher of a show lined up for you today, as our panel will be discussing the no doubt controversial results of the Junkyard's recent Top 25 Indie Games poll. Now, I should let it be known that aside from the poll's organiser, Mike Phelan, none of us are actually aware of those results yet. So you'll have to bear with us if there are any moments of stunned silence. And indeed, if my beloved Wind and Water Puzzle Battles gets a low ranking, then I may just storm out in a huff and have to hand over to one of the guests to carry on the hosting for me. We'll provide a little more background on the poll momentarily, but before we do so, let's introduce the panel. First of all, at the top of the roster, we have Alex, who is tireless in his coverage of the Dreamcast indie and homebrew scene on his YouTube channel called The Sega Guru. Alex, welcome to the pod, mate. How are you keeping?
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm good. Pretty tired, though, because as some of you may know, I also do events. And we recently did an event last Friday, I think it was now. Obviously a totally different brand, but it is indie related. So obviously the Debug magazine. Yeah.
Yeah, the Debug Indie Awards.
That's the one.
Yeah, we were following that quite closely.
Yeah, that, to be fair, it was a really, really good event. And hopefully, like we said, we're going to turn it into a yearly event, yearly awards, as well as maybe some offshoot, smaller events as well. So obviously, everyone keep an eye out for that. But yeah, no, apart from that, like you said, tirelessly, literally covering the indie and homebrew world, as well as porting and everything like that. But yeah, tons going on, and it never seems to stop. So that's great, right? Great. So
yeah. Just one more pod today, or have you got another 4 or 5 lined up afterwards?
No, it's just the one today, but likely going to be recording some more footage for a few other games that should be dropping soon, as well as a lot of editing, which is crazy because obviously we're all working all of these type of things around our day jobs, right? So
indeed.
Yeah, as you can tell, we're all knackered half the time.
Well, we appreciate it a lot. So thanks for joining us, Alex. Yeah. Secondly, we have our very own fountain of Dreamcast knowledge and a collecting supremo as well, Mike Phelan. What's up, Mike?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
How are you keeping, Mike? You knackered as well?
Yeah, I can't complain. Apart from the fact that I can. I'm a bit tired, but no, I'm looking forward to the pod. This has consumed my life for the last month, so I'm happy to get this particular monkey off my back.
Brilliant. That's what we want to hear. Thirdly, we have Lewis, who is now the coordinator of the Dreamcast Junkyard. Lewis, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, I'm all good. I have been binging Persona 3 Reload, and that's just been my entire life. So yeah, I'm glad to be on.
Is that on the dreaded PS2?
The original was, which is one of my favourite games that isn't on the Dreamcast. But yeah, this is on the PlayStation 4 that I've been playing it.
Lovely stuff. And then lastly, but not least, we have a fellow who's taken a break from cruising around these aisles on his motorcycle to be with us today. And so we're gonna savor every moment of his presence. It is the founder of the Dreamcast Junkyard himself, Tom Charnock.
Hello everybody. Thank you for having me as a guest on this fine podcast. But yeah, no, it's great to be back on the pod as a guest. I've been obviously keeping an eye on things on the blog, and I just wanted to say huge congratulations to all of you for keeping it going in my absence. And some really good features and podcasts and things been coming out in the recent past that I've thoroughly enjoyed consuming. as a consumer. So yeah, great. It's great to be here.
Must be nice to be on the other side of things for a little bit. How much arm twisting was required to get you back on the pod, Tom?
Oh, quite a bit. I should right now literally be neck deep in another motorcycle engine, but Lewis sent me a message. Would you like to be on the podcast? And I just said, of course, naturally.
Yeah. Who can say no to Lewis? Okay, right then. Now that everyone's settled in, I think we'll move swiftly on to the main topic of the day, which is this poll. But before we go into the results, I think it might be wise to provide some background for those who are brand spanking new to the Dreamcast scene, or perhaps those who are just more casual listeners who aren't necessarily all that clued in. So, Mike, can I put you on the spot and perhaps ask you to give a brief overview of what an indie Dreamcast game is, and why the hell did we think it was an opportune moment to poll readers about this topic?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, those of us who are knowledgeable at Dreamcast will know that for many years post Dreamcast's life, independent and unlicensed games have kept the console alive, right the way back to a game called Feet of Fury back in 2003. We've had numerous releases of games, both commercially and non-commercially. The console's architecture allows for quite good porting of games, but also lots of homebrew projects. And it's been something which I know the Junkyard's covered ever since the early days. Tom was a bastion of making sure that people knew what was going on with Dreamcast.
A bastion.
A bastion, yeah. It's a great bastion.
I've been called worse.
With the same first four letters, probably. But the point, I think, for me is I got into the Dreamcast scene because of the Junkyard. So when I was starting to get into Dreamcast quite heavily, post its life, I found a lot of the games on the website and the blog. So that's how I got into it. In terms of why we did the indie poll, so we did an indie poll back in 2016, which tied in with our top 200 games. That was relatively successful in terms of we had quite a few replies back to it. But I thought that the amount of games that have come out since, mainly because we've had two major publishers of indie games emerge, DreamPod and Wave Game Studios. So many games have been released in the last few years, it seemed fitting that after our 2023 top 200 poll, that we did a new indie poll as well.
Mike, am I right in thinking that the Dreamcast has probably the most sort of fervent or active indie scene of any retro console? Would that be right in saying, do you think?
I'm not sure if we have necessarily the most active. I think it's probably the fact that it's quite high profile, because of the fact it's quite a niche, not niche console, but quite a beloved sort of cult console. I'm sure Alex will probably give a better answer, but I know the Nintendo, obviously the NES, is probably going to be a lot higher in terms of number of games. I think the Atari 2600 has probably got thousands of homebrew and indie games, but the Dreamcast always seems a little bit more, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit more professional with what's happened, but also we had quite a few really high quality shooters at a time where it was not that much different than modern day releases. I mean, something like Sternwind looked like a modern day game. So I think that's possibly the reason.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Dreamcast is definitely the most prevalent one. It's the one that everyone seems to notice, especially when you've got, Wave Game Studios releasing physical releases and things like that. And obviously there's quite a lot of press around that as well, so people naturally see it. I have noticed, though, the Mega Drive scene now seems to be really getting up there. I mean, predominantly there was just a lot of ports to the Mega Drive. Games like R-Type and all that are kind of coming now and things like that. But there's also a lot of original titles as well as there's a load of arcade ports as well heading to the system. I mean, even the Saturn is starting to get some arcade ports, like X-Men, for example, the arcade game. That's going to the Sega Saturn. So yeah, there's tons. But like you said, Dreamcast seems to be the one that everyone notices, because ultimately everyone knows Dreamcast didn't last very long, and hence people just seem to the fans who love it really love it, right?
Yeah.
And we're never going to stop. So we'll do anything we can to get people's eyes on it. That's my rant over, really. But you're right. Dreamcast is the one, right? Everyone notices it.
Obviously, we wish all the best to indie developers, publishers on the other systems. But for us here at the Junkyard, obviously, our obsessive focus, I suppose, is very much on the Dreamcast. And as Mike was saying, there's been a huge number of different games released, even since the last time we ran the poll. And given that these are games that are produced by, sometimes it's a matter of, a single person or, a two-man team with a little bit of help here and there. Obviously, it's appropriate to highlight them, for us to highlight them and give them some love. And even that aside, I think a lot of these games are worthy of praise. They stand on their own two legs. So that's kind of the rationale as to why we've ran this poll. With that out of the way, maybe we can roll straight onto the results themselves. Mike, would you like to take over the reins here and perhaps do the first big reveal for number 25?
I certainly would. So number 25 in the poll. So I want to just preface this by saying that we had an absolute fantastic response. We had well over 125 responses, which doesn't sound much for a poll, but for a Dreamcast poll, it's pretty impressive. We had 71 titles named, which is huge. We could easily have done a top 50 and have every one of those top 50 have more than 3 votes, which I think says quite a lot about how many people really got engaged with this. I also had some entries by email, which was a bit odd. On the last day, I checked all the results and I had people email. I don't know how they got my email, but there we go. Somehow I had 3 email ones, so a bit of a weird one.
I'm surprised you didn't get anybody like sort of running up to you in the street with a folded up bit of paper and then just running away with it, with like their choices scribbled on it,
Yeah, I mean, I was waiting for it. I would have responded with my usual scowl. So yeah,
maybe we'll do answers on a postcard next time.
But yeah, so the first title. So the first title is a game which actually ranked in the last poll at number 7, and it is a game called Fast Striker.
Can you tell us a little bit about Fast Striker? What type of game is it? Who published it and the like?
Yeah, so it's a shooter published in 2010 by NG Dev Team, who are a publisher who made lots of all shooters actually. Sadly, haven't made a Dreamcast game in quite a while, but sort of really well known as being one of those big indie shooter games.
It's a vertical shooter, but you don't play it in Tate mode. You play it so that it fills the entirety of your screen.
Is this the game that started out on Neo Geo?
Yeah, I think so. It's NG Dev Team, right?
That's the one. Yeah,
The
guys behind Gunlord.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I have fond memories of this title. It's quite old now, really, for an indie title. And at the time, there weren't that many people putting out games, and NG Dev Team obviously were kind of making waves at the time. Yeah, I really appreciated this because a lot of shooters, so for example, Last Hope had come out and that was horizontal, and I really don't get on with horizontal shooters, and so this one I loved. But the one thing I don't like about it is the bloody DVD box that doesn't fit in with all my other games on the shelf. But I think that was typical at the time. It was kind of, I don't know, DVD cases were perhaps seen as a more contemporary thing in the 2000s.
Do you think it was just because they were just easier to get hold of?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
There was that kind of like excitement of, how there were so many final Dreamcast games in Japan that came in DVD cases, and it was like, ooh, that's cool. And then they're like bringing out these indie games kind of in that similar vein.
Be nice to see more PAL cases, right? Obviously there was Postal, for example, the port that came to the Dreamcast. That came in a nice case, but a lot of them just don't use them.
All the JoshPod games do, which always makes their games look pretty decent.
Yeah.
I know we had this discussion in the past, but we were discussing like, where are they getting these cases from? I mean, are they making them themselves? Are they just buying up multiple copies of Choo Choo Rocket for 99p each off eBay?
Yeah.
Like, where are they coming from? I still don't know personally, but answers on a postcard if you're listening to this, and
Yeah, if I remember correctly, so this obviously all came through Wave Game Studios. I think Dan said that there are a couple people who currently hoard them, and they've literally got boxes upon boxes of them. So when they found them, they've bought them up or, kept them. And then when people actually want them, there's only a few people who you can actually go to actually get them from.
Oh, right, like new old stock or something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I mean, if there's a mold out there somewhere, I'm sure there may be. But yeah, no, currently it's just being hoarded by some people.
And if that leads me on to the next thing, sorry, I know we're going slightly off topic, but if somebody is actually manufacturing new cases, surely they could actually re-engineer that horrible hinge that just breaks as soon as you look at it.
Yeah. I want my hinges to be fragile.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's the authenticity.
It's true to the original. I'm a purist. But DVD case aside, I think this is actually, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the better indie shmups for the system, and I think this was in my own personal top 10 games, and I think I'd rank it above the likes of Ghostblade, but we'll have to wait and see what comes above it.
Yeah.
Okay, what's in at number 24 then, Mike?
So number 24 is one of my personal favourites. It's a game released a couple of years ago by JoshPod, and it was a port of an Astroport game, and the game is called Rocketron, which is a criminally underrated game. It's a sort of Metroidvania style adventure. Just plays really, really well. I think it's a port of a PC game originally. It didn't get a massive amount of votes compared to what I thought it would, but it is a really good game.
I haven't played that one. There's a lot of the recent JoshPod releases that I haven't actually played. So if I just go weirdly quiet on some of these games, that's why.
I think it got swept up. I mean, Mike, I think you said this in your your big guide that you put up recently on the Junkyard, that this released alongside a lot of other games, some of which, for example, I think Tough Guy was one of them. Just some of it was very varied in quality, and then there was just kind of this one that you when you played them all really stood out to you, and I feel maybe it kind of got overshadowed by some of the other releases, maybe, or quantity versus quality, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many games released. I think we had to wait a couple of, or at least a year for them as well. It was a bit delayed. They all got really, really badly overlooked. I think also it's possibly less exciting to port a game from the PC. I think people don't get as much excited by that as they would from something which is a little bit more unique or a little bit more console driven. But I would implore everybody to check them out, because they are, especially Rocketron is just really, really, really good. It's got story elements in it. It's got a really cool jetpack, which you can basically use on the levels, which you can just fly around the levels. A little bit like Bango, I suppose, but not quite so bullet hell. Just really good. It's basically like a reimagining of a 90s sort of Turrican kind of game, but with a wider scope, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the kind of the kind of dystopian storyline that's in it. I mean, it's not essential to the game, but I like them including that, and I felt that this was. I just had a lot of fun playing this game. I must admit, I haven't completed it. I'm a bit shit at this game, and I find myself at times sitting there and having to reload and try and repeat a sequence and failing. But overall, I was really impressed, and I think that it's actually something that hasn't actually been done a lot within the indie scene. So yeah, I totally agree with Mike. I think that perhaps it's just the case that because Josh Frog got to a point where they were releasing it was something crazy, like releasing like a dozen games on the Dreamcast all at the same time, which obviously is great in some respects, but I don't know about you, but I can't afford to buy all of those. So I just kind of looked through and picked one out, and yeah, I was glad that I picked up Rocketron because it's really decent game. Okay, how about number 23 then, Mike?
So number 23 is a return of NG Dev Team, and it's the last of their releases, which is a game whose pronunciation I'm going to absolutely butcher now, because I don't actually think I've ever heard it pronounced. It's Neo XYX? Zeeks?
Yeah, I got that. XYX.
Yeah, XYX. Neo XYX, which is a vertical shooter. I hope to God I got that right this time. It's a vertical shooter. It's extremely colourful vertical shooter. A game which I don't think we received particularly brilliantly on the Dreamcast Junkyard when it first came out. But actually, it plays pretty decently. I played it a couple of nights ago. It does play pretty well. So yeah, that's number 23.
Do you know what? To be fair, this one has totally missed me by. I've heard of it so many times, but never actually taken any time to take an actual look at it. Is it massively different to games like Fast Striker? Is it really any different? Or is it just more of the same?
I suppose it depends on your mileage with shooters, doesn't it, really? It's a really weird game because the game actually, if you play the game for the first time, it defaults to a horizontal orientation on screen.
Yeah.
And it isn't a horizontal shooter. It's really bizarre. They sort of defaulted it to the wrong screen setting. It's only when you actually change it to a vertical one when you realise that's how the game should be played. So the first impression is not great. It's, I suppose, don't want to spoil the surprise for later on, but there are other shooters that have probably done things better. And I think this one sort of just melded into a bit of a mesh with the other NG Dev Team games.
Just on that topic, I'm going to make a statement here that may get people throwing their iPod touches at the wall. But all of those kind of mid-period like shmups that came out on the Dreamcast, to me, they all kind of blended into one. And unless someone presented me with a list, which somebody like Mike has usefully created for me, I couldn't pick them out of a lineup, from a screenshot. I would be like, well, is that Pink Bullets, or is that Neo XYX, or is that Fast Strike? I'm like, I don't know.
That was a whole thing, wasn't it? And I presume this would have probably fit into that time. The abundance of shooters that were coming out on the system. And I think now we can look back at them and think, yeah, some of these were great. I mean, obviously, we can see from the fact that they got voted into this top 25. But I think at the time, people kind of wanted something a bit different. So there was that kind of fatigue a little bit. But like I say, we can look back now, having gotten past the shooter era, and we can look back fondly.
The Ducks Redux era.
Exactly. I think that is what kind of cemented that attitude in people's minds. Personally, I think if there's any one thing, it was because Ducks got re-released like 15 times.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were some differences, but it just wasn't warranted at all. Whereas with games like Neo XYX, Fast Striker, there are some fairly substantial differences between them. I think perhaps you have to be more of a shmup head to be able to appreciate and see those differences. Whereas if you're not really into shooters, you probably find it hard to differentiate between them. But yeah, they do tend to look. I find that the overall look of games like Neo XYX, Fast Striker, and the like, they do tend to look similar, and I think it just comes down to the fact that they had the same developer in NG Dev Team.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm wrong on this, but I think HuCast, who produced shooters, had some relationship with NG dev team as well. I think there was some crossover of personnel. So, if you've got the same people working on games, then I suppose there's going to be similarities.
All of our shooters basically came from Germany.
Right.
The mid-age Dreamcast indie scene was basically German shooters, which has sort of changed quite a bit since then. I mean, we've had quite a few shooters released in the last few years, but they've all been Japanese developed.
Right.
And they've pretty much gone under the radar. I mean, if I talk to a random Dreamcast person and ask them if they know the game Wolflame, they would have a clue.
True. And I personally really appreciate the NG dev team outlay, looking back on it now, and I wish someone would pick them up to republish them, because at the moment, some of these games, you can only get them secondhand, and the prices are just insane. But anyhow, moving swiftly on to number 22 then.
Yeah, it's number 22, a game you can pick up still, and it's a port of a old game, and the game is called Flashback.
Ooh, love a bit of Flashback.
Yes, one of Tom's favourites, I believe.
Yeah, the trials and tribulations of one Comrade B. Hart are actually very close to my heart. I love that series. I first played it on the Mega Drive, and I have fond memories of visiting my dad's house. He had he actually bought a copy of Sega Power because it had a guide to every level in the game. It was all kind of printed out on like a double page spread. The whole levels, like a maze. And that's kind of where my love affair with that game came from, really. And then obviously when they were re-released on the Dreamcast, Flashback and the sequel, Fade to Black. Yeah, obviously I jumped in. Love them. Great sort of space opera style rotoscoped visuals, and yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, it's a fantastic game. But it isn't it the case that the version on the Dreamcast is kind of thought of quite fondly amongst Dreamcast fans because it has quite a lot of additional content?
Yeah, so they did put quite a lot of effort into this, to be honest. There's things that we take for granted with modern games, like, with like Halo Anniversary, you can sort of switch between different visual sort of models, the original Xbox version and the upgraded sort of 360 versions. There's similar things in Flashback for the Dreamcast where you have like the different versions of the game. You can change the style of the FMV sequences, rather than them being done in engine like the original like Amiga and 16-bit versions. The 3DO version had full motion video cutscenes, and you can literally switch between them on the fly. There's different monitor modes. Obviously, there's VMU saving. It's a really great package. You've even got the differences between like the NTSC and the PAL versions. It's literally like a greatest hits version of Flashback. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I think the Dreamcast version is the only version that has all that additional content. Maybe the Switch version does. I've actually got it on my Switch. I should actually check. But up until that point, it was the only version that did have all of those extra quality of life features. And it's just a fantastic package all around, I think.
I think I'll have to pick this up at some point. I've got a list of games I want to buy on limited resources. But I think, Tom, I think you reviewed this for the blog, actually. So we'll have to put a link to that in the show notes.
I did, yeah. It's stuff like this that I really, really appreciate, where they actually got the official, the original developer to be involved in the creation of this new package for the Dreamcast. And it's that attention to detail that just like elevates it above, not saying it's better than anything else on this list, because obviously it's not. It's at 22 or 23, but it's that attention to detail that I really liked and just appreciate. So it was a great job from Josh Prod to bring this to the Dreamcast in the way that they did.
I was going to say, at that point, it's not just a simple port, is it? It's it's got the love and kind of attention from the originals behind it, so makes it that much more special.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, not just another money grab, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Flashback. What do we have at number 21, Mike?
So at number 21, we have the original indie release, Feta Fury. So it didn't rank in the last poll, 2016. But it's met 21, which is pretty impressive for a game which is 21 years old.
Yeah,
I feel like the lore of this game is as interesting as the game itself. With the whole, what was it, E3 2001? There was a demo that was distributed, and then Goat Store really thought these games were really special, and they picked up Feet of Fury, and that's kind of all where it started, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're right. So just a little bit of a plug here. I did an article for issue 4, I think it is, of Debug magazine, obviously which ties into your involvement, Alex, with the Debug Awards. It was a look at the history of independent Dreamcast retail releases, and Feet of Fury obviously was the one that kicked off the whole sort of scene in essence. And when I was researching, the game and the history of the game and where it all came from, I came across the original website, blog and forums that the developers put up online through the Wayback Machine, and it was interesting just reading all of the, how this game came into being and how they actually got the deal with Goat Store to release it physically, and they didn't at one point didn't know what they were going to do with it, whether they were just going to give it away as a CDR or what. So we have a lot to thank this game for. In terms of kind of sprouting or sowing the seeds of the indie scene as we know it now. Because I think without Feet of Fury, we may not have the scene that we do kind of have at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it generally holds up quite well too. The Goat Store releases, I think they had the right emphasis. Like the emphasis was very much on the game. Sometimes the packaging and the kind of presentation of the game physically, wasn't as kind of showy as some other maybe more modern indie releases, but the titles were always really decent. Yeah, and I have fond memories of this game. I picked it up from Goat Store way back in the day, and it took forever to get through to me through customs.
Have you still got it? Have you still got the original copy that you bought back then?
Yes, I've got it. I've got it somewhere buried in a storage box under a bed, probably.
Okay, that on Antiques Roadshow in like 40 years' time. Yeah. See what Fiona Bruce thinks of that?
Yeah. I never played it with a dance mat though. Has anyone tried that?
I haven't either, to be honest.
No.
I have.
Of course you
have. Mike, how was it?
Well, I got very little use to the dance mat otherwise, have I? So, it was all right. I mean, it is... the game has quite a few bugs when you plug in with a dance mat, so it does crash quite a bit. But
okay.
Played decently enough.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'd like to see a video of that, Mike.
Not of me dancing, you wouldn't.
So it's more recommended as Hands of Fury rather than Feet of Fury, then, Mike.
That's a title or something else. Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, right then. Let's move on then to the first milestone, which is number 20.
Yeah, so number 20, I'm really, really pleased this game got in there. It's a game called Witching Hour, which is a Wolfenstein 3D mod, which sounds slightly less interesting than the rest of the releases on this list, but actually it's just an amazing indie horror game, which just, I think I summarised it in my review as being like a found footage video found in the woods, but it transferred to a Dreamcast game. It's very, very simple, but it's incredibly good fun.
It's a very dark game, though, right? You can easily find yourself getting lost in and around the forest.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's quite a jumpy game, to be fair. You don't expect something like that to really be as jumpy as it is, but it is. I totally agree. It's a great title.
Mike, I read your review of this on the Dreamcast Junkyard blog in the recent past, but I seem to remember this one coming out quite some time ago. Was it sort of reissued as a physical game, or what's the story there?
Yeah, so there was a Polish publisher studio called Pro Studio, released it in 2022 as a licensed, or the original developer gave permission. I believe the original developer may not be given permission anymore. I'm not entirely sure, but they basically gave permission at the time, and they released a quite small quantity of physical copies, which look really, really good.
Bit gutted I never picked one of those up. This is Slender for the Dreamcast, essentially. And so, I recommend people play it maybe for that reason. But you can download it online for free. I've never seen them physical copies come up on eBay because I didn't get it at the time for money reasons, and now I'm gutted, especially when Mike showed off all the little film cells and the map and all these different bits that came with it. It looks like a really high quality physical release, actually.
Yeah, I love the effort that they put in, and this is like as indie can be. This was very very much something that was done by a small number of people just for the love of it. But the one thing that I don't know if it's opening Pandora's box, but this was one of the games where I was like, does this qualify? Is it an indie? Is it not? 'Cause it's kind of a
it's a mod, isn't it?
It's a mod, right? It's a mod, and I think that may potentially be one of the things that could have prevented it from being more of a widely produced thing, because I doubt the original creators of the game that it was based on would have given their permission for something to be sold. But that's by the by, really. When it's done in small numbers.
To jump feet first straight into Pandora's box, you kind of have to draw. And where do you draw the line? I mean, there's things like After the Fall, which was a Quake total conversion. I mean, does that qualify? I mean, even though it wasn't given a physical release, I mean, would that qualify in this list? So I don't know.
So to clarify, because obviously I was the one who set the rules up. So any game on this list has to have the original developer had to give permission. My understanding is that actually the original developer of the mod did give their permission when the game got published. If the original hadn't been released physically, it probably wouldn't have qualified, because obviously it's just a mod. But because it got that release, I did allow it. And actually, I'm pretty surprised by how many votes it got. It got a huge amount of votes. Very popular in Europe. So yeah, really, really popular game. So that's why it qualifies for this list. It's probably the only game on the entire list which is a little bit dubious in terms of whether it qualifies or not, to be honest with you.
Well, consider me crawling sheepishly back out of Pandora's box and slowly closing the lid and backing away.
I suppose this is probably obvious. I'm sure listeners understand this, but despite it being a mod, if you turn this on, it isn't, it's in the engine, but it doesn't, it's not like Wolfenstein at all, really.
No. It's total conversion, isn't it? It's total conversion rather than the mod.
Right, on that note, let's intersperse our list, I think, with some of the other votes that will run concurrently. So we asked readers to vote for who they thought the best indie publisher was. So who are we awarding that to, Mike?
Drum roll, please.
Yes, drum roll. So this was actually quite a tight one. I'm going to go through it in reverse order for the top three, because I like to give some more drama to things, you know what I mean? Number 3 was NG Dev Team, which is pretty impressive for a publisher that hasn't published a game for a few years. Number 2 was Josh Prod, but number 1 was Wave Game Studios.
It had to be, really, didn't it? Are you going to cut some round of applause, sound effects in as well?
We are now. I think they think they started a new era of indie games, to be honest with you. I think they had a massive amount of publicity in that first year. I think Postal got so much publicity. And, obviously some other games which are quite high in the rankings. There was a lot of votes for it. Josh Prod, I think, is taken for granted a little bit, possibly, in the background sometimes now. But, yeah.
And we have a few words here from Wave themselves about being given this award.
Hey there, Daniel from Wave here. I think it's fair to say that everything we do at Wave has the community in mind. In fact, we really do it for the community, and the community is the whole reason why we even started in the first place. So to hear this news is honestly a true honour. We've got some big surprises planned for this year, so keep an eye out for those. And we hope to keep putting out really awesome stuff for Dreamcast fans everywhere. Once again, thank you all very, very much. We really appreciate it. And keep dreaming.
Right, so back to the main list then. What number are we up to now, Mike? Is it number 19?
19, yeah. Number 19 is another game I'm really pleased by. It's a game called Finding Teddy, which is another Josh Pod release, which is criminally overlooked. It's something unlike any other game on Dreamcast. It's sort of a Tim Burton, quite a sedate adventure title, but just full of charm. Finding Teddy, number 19.
I've never played Finding Teddy, but in my mind, I'm thinking of one of those games where you get like an image and you have to like click on it to see where the teddy might be. Is like a Where's Wally or Where's Waldo type thing.
Luckily, no, it's not a Where's Wally game. Although a Where's Wally game on Dreamcast would be pretty amazing, actually. No, it is. It's a really odd one to describe because it is pretty unique. But it's basically just sort of an adventure game. You point and click around the screen. But it's all it's very Tim Burton-like. It's the best way of me describing the game. If you like Tim Burton, as I do, then there's a lot to like in it. It's a real good, and the pixel artwork is fabulous. Really, really good pixel artwork.
I'm personally really glad this one got a place because I think it is one of the more underrated indies we have on the Dreamcast, and I think actually, for those who are into indies on contemporary consoles, this reminds me a lot of one of those kind of sort of dreamy kind of games that you see a lot. I think there's a game that's quite cult online called Yume Nikki. It reminds me a lot of that, where it's this very like I think you described it as sedate, Mike. Yeah, it has this very sort of like lo-fi feel to it, and it's all a bit kind of strange and dreamlike and just quite relaxing as well, like in parts. And yeah, just it plays really well as well on the Dreamcast. So yeah, definitely recommend this one.
Well, I've never played this myself, but I've heard other members of the Junkyard wax lyrical about it, so I think I'll have to put it on my list to buy, and I will go out there soon and find my teddy. Okay, so moving on to number 18 then, Mike.
Number 18 is a game released a few years ago from Josh Pod again, and this is 4x4 Jam, which was the first 3D Dreamcast indie game. Well, it was a port of an older title, which I think released on a PSP Mini game, if I remember rightly.
Yes.
4x4 Jam, it's an off-road racer, something which myself and Tom are somewhat keen on the genre. And it's pretty decent, actually. I mean, I think at the time when it was released, I thought, and I reviewed it, and I think I sort of made a point of saying this is the new era of 3D gaming on the Dreamcast indie scene. And in the year since, we've had, two? So maybe not quite the new era that we thought, but actually a pretty decent game.
Yeah, it is. It reminded me quite a lot of Smuggler's Run, where you kind of you dropped in a buggy into this sort of open environment and you have to do like point-to-point races. It does get quite repetitive after a while, but at the end of the day, it is basically a port of a PSP mini game. And for those who don't know, PSP minis were like almost like phone quality games that were released, as the name suggests, on the PSP, like a budget price. And so it's not doing anything like amazing on the Dreamcast. It's not like visually like hugely impressive, but it's good enough, and it plays really well, and it's just a lot of fun. Some really great physics on the vehicles, and when you're in the heat of a race and you've got cars like smashing out of the course and things hitting trees and you're trying to dodge crashes that happen in front of you, it's actually really good fun. So yeah, it's a decent game.
I think if I'm honest, when it comes to 3D and indie, we don't really see a lot of it. No. A lot of the releases they're 2D. Not for that's a bad thing, because at the end of the day, the Dreamcast does 2D very, very well. But it would be nice to see more 3D indie titles come. And I don't know if there's just a hesitance from developers to do that. Mm-hmm. It would be nice to see a few more, either if it's races, no matter what it is, it would just be nice to see something just a little bit different,
Yeah, it's interesting actually, Alex. It's a good point that you raise, because there is a school of thought, that the Dreamcast is vastly underutilized in the indie space, and a lot of the games are, like you say, relatively simple. Again, I always have to say this: not a developer, so I don't know what the trials and tribulations are around making a game, but yeah, there is a distinct lack of games that really kind of push the system. or use 3D engines. And maybe that is just down to how easy it is to make a 2D game.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. To be fair, all I get in comments for obviously the sort of stuff I cover is it's not a 3D game. Where are the 3D games? And it's like like you said, we're not developers. I wouldn't have a clue how to create a game. So all the 2D creations are great, but. Yeah, I don't know, because there's quite a few high-profile developers out there now. Obviously, Ian Michael being probably one of the most well-known at the moment, working on pretty much everything. Even he said he's got a desire to do a 3D game, a totally new game. But what he keeps, for kind of work, the things he keeps getting pushed towards are ports. Because everyone seems to want to port everything to the Dreamcast, which is great, because it means the library's just getting bigger and bigger. But when it comes to seeing something new, it just always gets kind of put to the back burner. And it is a shame. It is a shame, but yeah.
When Luke Benstead released his Simulant engine, and there was that demo called, was it The Caves or something like that?
Tunnels.
Yeah, that's it. You could walk around this sort of 3D space, and it looked really, really good. The environment wasn't like all jagged. It was actually like rounded and smooth. The caverns themselves looked really good. And I thought, this is going to be the dawn of a new era for like 3D games with this engine. But I know that several games have used the engine since it was released, but we've not really seen anything that's been like visually really sort of captivating yet. Maybe we will down the line. Yep. So
funny enough, he was at the debug event, and I was speaking to him. Right. Yeah. And he obviously said he's still working on a range of titles, including, what was it? Was it Swirling Blades? I think it was called originally.
Oh yeah, the helicopter game.
Yeah. So I think he's still working on that. There is. Nice. I hope I'm not giving away too much here, because he didn't say don't tell anyone, so we should be okay. There is a racer, and I believe it's kind of. Do you know the game Ignition that came out on the PC years ago?
No, but I should look it up.
No, I think it's one that, to be fair, not a lot of many people know about, but it's kind of pseudo 3D. It's almost a little bit top down, a bit like Micro Machines as well. It's kind of got that in between. And he is a big fan of that game, and I think he's trying to create something very similar, which should be good. I've seen a few little concept art pieces and like models for that, so that'll be great. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what else he does come up with.
Well, we'll have to see what comes down the line, and I'm sure that we do have a section for most anticipated game, and there may well be a 3D game in there, so we can perhaps talk about that a little more in a bit. Right, so where are we up to, Mike? Is it number 17?
Number 17. Number 17 is another shooter, the latest shooter release, and a very good one, Andro Junos 2, the sequel to a pretty underwhelming Neo Geo game, in my opinion. But really good. I've played this game a lot, and I've played it alongside the Switch version, and I've got to be honest with you, the Dreamcast version is pretty good. I know some people in the comments from any article or thing will say that I'm talking out my arse and it has loads of problems and it has a pixel ratio of some nonsense. I don't care. It's a fun game. Shut up.
I agree. It's a great game. I played it I put it on the Series X.
Yeah.
I didn't get I've got the original Andro Dunos for the Dreamcast, but I haven't got the sequel. I know, didn't you review it, Loz, for the blog? Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate Mike coming out to bat on the same side as me, because I gave it pretty much a positive review. I found it really fun, and aside from I recognise, of course, it's not on the same level as some of the other releases on the other platforms, but I was getting pretty slated in the comments about how bad a release it was. And if you look on, like, there's a board called I think it's System 11, which is where like all the hardcore shmuppers hang out, and they were slating the game as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Is that just because of the emulation quality? Or?
It's because they're just soulless, Tom.
I think yeah, it is. Well, maybe a combination of both. Yeah, I think there are there are some technical aspects to it that people feel could have been handled better on the Dreamcast. And so it basically comes down to that, and also that when you first put the disc in, it takes an eternity to load, which puts some people in a bad mood right from the off.
Yeah.
Is it Neo for All again? Is it just using the emulator?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not one of those games which has a nice big Neo for All message at the beginning of the game. Right. I think some people basically think that they should have put as much time into porting it to an old 25-year-old console as they do to modern platforms which sell millions and millions of copies. Because these people have they're shooter fans. You know what I mean? They live in a world of 80s gaming rather than sort of modern day experiences. I'm sorry, I'm on another little band there. There you go.
Caveat, shooter fans. If you want to send some hate mail, don't send it to us. You have to find Mike. Some people seem to be able to find his email. So
I mean, to be fair, these hardcore shooters probably have loads of really rare shooters lying around the house. If they want to send me one of those games as part of the hate mail, that's fine. I like shooters, but just stop moaning so much.
There we go. A very objective review there. Okay, right. Let's crack on then. So, what's number 16, Mike?
Number 16. Those people who think that Dreamcast indie releases of all shooter games are currently telling me that is correct. Basically, number 16 is Ghostblade, which is a HuCast game. A HuCast game which is not actually Ducks, which is a fun experience. A game which I believe that a well-known publication may have published a article in their daily periodical, which ripped off Tom Charnock.
I was going to mention that. Yeah, when I reviewed Ghostblade back in 2015 or whenever it was, the Metro newspaper published a review about 3 or 4 days after I'd published mine. And to say that there's a whole thing about plagiarism now on the internet. Yeah. It was so blatant. Even the structure of the review, the terminology I'd used. And I went down this big rabbit hole speaking to, I ended up emailing, because I think the Daily Mail group owns the Metro. And I ended up speaking to some senior editor at Mail Group, who had then instructed the freelancer to add a footnote to the article saying that it had been influenced by my review. This was way before the whole sort of IGN sort of plagiarism stuff that's all over YouTube now. And there's that H Bomber Guy video a few weeks ago. But this was my experience of that. But obviously I'm just a nobody blogger talking about Dreamcast games, and then the Metro completely rips off my reviews.
Why the Metro? Of all the things,
God knows.
Who turns on goes on the Metro website and goes, "Oh, nice new Dreamcast game."
Yeah.
I think it was just that whole clickbait thing where it's new Dreamcast, first new Dreamcast game in so many years, and this is it. And rather than just play it themselves, they may have played it themselves, but there's no doubt in my mind that they read my review and lifted sections of it. And I'll die on that hill.
For those who aren't aware, who live outside the UK, just so you know, the Metro is it's online as well, but it's like a free newspaper that gets handed out mainly in London, I think, but kind of all around the rail networks, and it's pretty garbage. But
it's linked to the Mail, so it's obviously garbage.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Well, or maybe we should say allegedly, because I hear the legal team is pretty.
Fuck it. It's true. Fuck the Mail.
I've still got all the emails in my Hotmail somewhere from them. So but anyway, back to the game itself. It's a fairly basic vertical scrolling shmup. There's not really much more to say about it than that.
If you want to know about it, just read the Metro's article.
Yeah, just go read the Metro's review. Yeah.
Well, evidently, some people like it enough. It's come above Fast Striker. So there must be some love for it out there. I tend to agree. I'm not overly enamoured. I think it looks nice, and I think they did a lot of kind of special limited editions which look very fancy on a shelf, and perhaps some people are into that. So
we actually reviewed it twice at a time as well. So not only did Tom review it as part of a sort of a non-shooter fanatic, we also had a review from Rob, who is, I believe, now the editor of PC Gamer UK.
Yes.
Okay, right. Moving swiftly on then getting my numbers mixed up already, Mike. What are we at?
Number 15 is a game which had an awful release, but got a much better re-release. It's a game called The Text Assist, which is and I'm not making this up, it is basically a mix of a cave shooter, so a bullet hell shooter, and Typing of the Dead. That's the game. Mm-hmm. That's the concept. It works perfectly. The original game was awful. To a bit of context for this, me and Lewis were talking about this for a long time at the time of release. But basically, the original game came out and you couldn't get past level 3. There was a bug in it, and it meant you couldn't actually get past level 3 in the retail release. They initially responded by saying there's not a problem until they realised that every single person who had the game said the same thing.
Yeah, they said to skip the text where it crashes. Yeah.
Don't read the story. There's no point in the story, is there?
But yeah, even though the game is very text heavy, story driven. Yeah.
Did they issue a new disc then, with MSR?
Yeah, so they basically released a slipcase game called the Exercised version.
All right.
But actually, the game, it's such a shame it had a bad launch, because the game is fantastic. If you like horror, it's got so many horror references in it. If you like shooters, it's got such a great mechanic in it. And obviously, if you like something like Typing of the Dead and want to get a keyboard out for a Dreamcast, it's a really, really good game. It's just a shame that it was just an appalling launch.
Yeah. I will say as well, I think out of all the games on this list, I think this one is the one that it stands out kind of as unique because it does make use of a peripheral like the keyboard. And I think I would like to see more indies do that. So it is quite unique in that regard.
A lot of the indie games, they don't really go outside of the box in regards to peripherals, do they? They kind of, they stay very safe. Again, I'm not sure why that is, but maybe we do need some more things that actually do use keyboard and mouse. We don't see a lot of FPSs. I know we were talking about Witch Now earlier and things like that, but let's have a good indie FPS. That would be great.
I'll tell you what, we'll have to get you onto the producers of Slave, which has been in development hell for a long time.
50th anniversary was meant to be released for. 25 years now, 10 years ago. They still got the money.
Yeah, so I think it's the same with what was the other one that was the horror title? Is it Hypertension? Yeah.
So that's weird. That one's because they've been releasing footage on Facebook of that game for the last few months. But about 100 people have asked the question, is this one on Dreamcast? And they haven't answered it once.
Yeah.
It's because it's no.
No, exactly. It's a no, definitely.
God, I remember interviewing the developer of Hypertension back in 2014 or something.
Yeah.
And it was imminent then. God.
Blimey. Okay. Well, anyway, Text Assist, excellent game. If if you buy it now, basically anyone who's bought it in the space of the last year or up to now will have got the fixed version. It's well worth playing. And I think it's still available, actually, from Game Fairy, so you can pick it up. Keeping things moving, let's get back to the list. And I think we're at number 14, are we, Mike?
Well, number 14, I'm going to say really little about this game because I wrote the review of it and I savaged it. It's Arcade Racing Legends.
Yeah, I haven't played it myself, but I've heard not great things about it. But obviously garnered enough votes to be at number 14.
Yeah.
So
Lots of votes.
Yeah.
They're all wrong, but lots of votes. No, I mean, that sounds really harsh. I mean, the game is, there was a 3D game developed by a publisher who hadn't, released their own games before. It does a lot of stuff really well. It laid the foundations. It was more like a tech demo than it was actually a game. The AI is awful. There's some other issues with it, but it obviously people want racing games. So Joshpod, you need to make a sequel because if you make a sequel, it will be probably one of the best games on Dreamcast.
Yeah, I think for me that game, just the basics like the controls of the car, that it just didn't feel right. Which is a shame. It's an arcade racing game. That's all you should be really sorting, right? Visuals and all that can come after, but the actual controls, it just didn't work, which is a shame because even the box art and everything actually I thought looked quite good. It looked serviceable, but yeah, basics. You got to get that right.
So you heard it here, listeners. You are wrong.
100%. Democracy does not work.
No, not here.
Well, maybe we'll have to get someone on another episode who can speak to their love of arcade racing legends, because I'm not a huge fan either, but evidently it is quite popular in the scene. So there we are. Right, let's move on to number 13 then, Mike.
Number 13 is a game which was originally released, I think, for free, and then it was published on a forum for a select few of hardcore Dreamcast fans, and then it was released by Josh Pod. It's a game called Volgar the Viking, which is an impossibly hard Norse-themed platformer, if you want to be that generic with it. Really good game, released on all modern-day platforms at the time as well. When it came out in, I think it was 20. I don't know what year it came out now, but several years ago.
19, I think.
Yeah, I think that was the Josh Pod release. I think it came out in about 2015. I think it was originally ported by a guy called Mark Hall, very importantly. But yeah, it's an impossibly hard game. I think I've seen 2 levels of the entire game, but it's really, really good.
You've seen more than I have then, Mike, because I think I've got about 10 to 15 minutes into the first level, and every single time just died. Yeah, to the point where I just gave up.
It's like Ghosts and Goblins. You know what I mean? Yeah, Ghosts and Goblins is a great game. I've seen literally about the first 20 seconds before it died several times. But it's really good. Mechanics in the game. It's just I'm crap at games.
So basically, if you want to get punished, if you want to get punished and be ripping your hair out, then play this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can still grab it at a very reasonable price, and it comes up in sales quite often. But yeah, like you said, you will want to smash something up after playing it, right?
Okay, right. Moving on to number 12.
Yeah, number 12 is the controversial but highly publicised release of Postal, which came out 2 years ago now, and is a game. It's a good game. It's a game I played. Unlike everyone else, it seems, I actually played it when it was first released. And
back on the PC?
Yeah, I'm never really sure why everyone thinks it's some kind of amazing game, because when it came out originally, it was sort of laughed at a little bit. But
I think the sequel is the really popular one, and I guess that's the association people draw with the series, I guess.
Definitely not number 3, because number 3 is appalling.
Disowned by the
disowned by one of the
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you qualified this earlier, Mike, on how games are actually included in this, but because it was actually given a full sort of release back in the day, whether or not this is actually really technically indie is one for discussion. But you, like I say, you went over this earlier on because it was given the blessing of the original developers running with scissors. Because when somebody asked them when you're going to release Postal on the Dreamcast, because they made the source code like sort of public domain or something. And then they just basically put it out to the internet. If you want to put this on the Dreamcast, then be our guest, and that's how it came into being on the Dreamcast.
And I just want to take this time as well just to shout out Dan Redfield, who worked tirelessly on the port, because he used to be on Twitter quite frequently updating about this port he was doing, and now he's kind of gone away. Just he needs to be shouted out because what he did on this port is incredible. Like he added in features like local co-op. Like he worked his arse off to do this. So he worked really hard on it, and hopefully he comes back because he's incredibly talented. So yeah, shout out to Dan for his port.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and don't forget the addition of twin stick support for Postal as well.
Yeah, we for those who are curious, we have a full review up on the blog that covers all these talking points and more. So
didn't you review that one as well, Loz?
Yes, I did.
Didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Just plugging my own work there slightly. Okay, right then. So moving on to number 11.
Yep. So number 11. Number 11 is a game with an iconic lead character whose little plush version is next to me as I speak. It's a game called Flea, which is a game released by Low Tech Games, Alistair Lowe, back in 2020. Was then re-released by Wave Game Studios. It is a great, fun little game. I think it reached 147th in our overall top 200 as well, which is pretty incredible for a game which is basically a NES port, but really fun. really enjoyable, and the main character is a legend whose charming and annoyed personality is something I want to live my life by.
There was a great section on the during the Debug Awards where Alistair Lowe gave a talk about how Flea came into being. I thought it was really interesting. It gave like a sort of history of the development of the game and where the ideas came from. And yeah, I just thought it was really insightful because I didn't really know much about the history of it. So I just wanted to give that a quick plug as well. It's on the Debug YouTube channel. You can go and find the actual talk that he gives on stage. Well worth a watch.
To be fair, Alistair, he does something very different, right? His games are just like his pop-up book games that he's creating with the projector and everything. They're all very different, and obviously Flea is literally the character is just constantly jumping. He tries to do something a little bit different, and cute characters, right? Like the Flea himself, and all the other here in it, Tapeworm, etc.
He's created like a little universe, hasn't he, of his characters, which is really clever. And I feel like it's a testament to how good this game is, that for what is essentially an NES port or a NES port has gotten so high in these rankings.
Yep.
I know we have this whole thing where like companies release these NES games onto Dreamcast, but the fact that this one is almost like an outlier in the usual criticism that kind of practice gets seems to, I guess, just show that the game's quality speaks for itself.
Yeah, it's a superb release, and I was so happy and actually amazed when I completed it, because I had so many failed attempts to get through some of those later levels. But great game, and I knew Mike would like it because the kind of anti-establishment leanings of the narrative in there would tickle his fancy.
You have to like revolutionary games.
Yes.
In both respects.
Okay, excellent. And right, before we move on, we will have another sidebar again for the most anticipated game. So what's in the running here, Mike?
Right, so this one wasn't close. I will preface it very early on. Basically, very few games got more than a single vote. In third place was Shadow Gangs 2. Had a couple of votes. Pretty good for a game which is only very early in development. Number 2 was, how do you pronounce this? Paprium?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. The game, obviously, which had a bit of a checkered and controversial release on the Mega Drive a couple of years ago. That's coming out this year.
Is that definitely coming now to the Dreamcast, yeah?
I mean, I pledged a large amount of money for the Kickstarter, so I hope so. So that came number 2. Number 1, and it literally got about 85% of the entire vote. It was hugely popular. Is a game called Harley Quest, which is due in the next this year, I think, actually, isn't it?
Yeah,
wow.
That was pretty successfully kickstarted, wasn't it? The tail end of last year, and I'm sure all of you guys have played the demo of it. It's trying to do something different. It's a different genre. It's kind of, I don't know if you even called it, it's not really a dungeon crawler, but I don't know really how to describe it, but it just looks really, really good. And I'm so glad that it's done really, really well in its Kickstarter. What we've seen so far, it looks really, really good. Characters are great. The music's great. And yes, it's something to get excited about. Wave are meant to be publishing it, so that's good. So we got a good publisher. Let's just see it actually come out. Let's get our hands on it now.
This is the one that started life as a was it Dungeon Ross?
Yeah,
it was for a game jam, wasn't it? Like years ago. Yeah, I played that. Obviously, I wrote an article about it and did a little interview with Ross Kilgariff, the developer. And fast forward to now, and it's it's a fully fledged, fully funded Dreamcast game. So it's just a great story. From that initial idea to being a full release with a publisher and everything like that. Massive respect to Ross for sticking with it and seeing it out to fruition. Really. Well, can I just make one little sort of observation? I was expecting to hear the word midsummer in this section, which for those people who don't know was it's probably the worst kept secret in the world that Duranic, developer of Stormwind, was at some point in the distant past looking at the creation of a new game called Midsummer. We don't really know much about it other than the name, but that's gone a bit quiet, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It received a couple of votes. I think. It also received a vote with the title Duranic's Next Game. So that's probably the reason people don't really remember it that well. Because let's face it, in the time since it was announced, we've had 60 60 indie releases, which is, I think, says quite a lot about the indie scene.
All right, then. And speaking of Ross, here's a few words from the man himself about getting HarleQuest voted in as the most anticipated Dreamcast indie game.
Hi, this is Ross, developer of HarleQuest. Thanks so much, you guys, for voting for HarleQuest as the #1 most anticipated new Dreamcast game. I'm absolutely delighted that there's so much interest in the game, and I really hope you enjoy it when it releases later this year. If you want to keep up to date with the game's development, just visit either harley.quest or ross.codes in your browser, and you'll find links to everything related to the game. There's the Kickstarter page, the YouTube channel with developer log videos, the Discord server where you can get early access builds of the game and chat with the team, and I also live stream development at least once a week on Twitch. If you missed the Kickstarter last year, we'll be taking pre-orders for physical copies in a few months, so if you want to be notified of that, just follow any of the social media accounts, and we'll be shouting it from the rooftops when the time comes. So thanks again, guys. Thanks to Dreamcast Junkyard for supporting the indie Dreamcast community, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Cheers.
Now, moving on to another milestone, which is the 10th most popular indie game.
Yes, and talking about pleasing people on the podcast, this will please Loz, because this is Wind and Water Puzzle Battles, which ranked a lot higher than I thought it would, to be honest with you, but it deserves possibly even higher. Great puzzle game released, 16 years ago now. That makes you feel old. Really good but difficult puzzle game.
I'm pretty disgusted this isn't higher, to be honest.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Loz, I was going to say one of the things that I really loved about Wind and Water Puzzle Battles was the kind of, not career, but like the adventure mode in it, the story mode, where you basically go around and challenge people to these matches of this puzzle, and all the little characters that you get in there as well. I know that the Gaga Man, one of our previous hosts and founding members of the blog, he's actually in the game. Yeah, you could have yourself created in the game as a little character if you put in a code. I know he's in it. Are you in it, Mike?
No, I'm not.
I've got a code somewhere, but I think it's lost to time in an old Hotmail account.
Oh, right. So you're in it as well then, Loz, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that was a weird purchase as a teenager. Yeah.
Great music as well, I must say. One of the the soundtrack is I can hear it in my head. Now I'm not going to sing any of it for you, so don't worry.
I was waiting for you to start humming it, if I'm honest.
But it's brilliant soundtrack. It's just a charming game. The whole package is brilliant. And again, not trying to blow me on trumpet, but I did interview, I don't know how you pronounce it, Juan Works, who created the game some years ago. And they were just really a pleasure to speak to, and just so passionate about the little universe that they created around this puzzle game. Very, very cool.
Yeah, so if you want to pick this one up, I think it's getting increasingly difficult to find now, but there are still some retailers out there that have copies of it, because I think the original Red Spot Games version is long gone, but I think it was reprinted at some point.
Dragon Box Shop.
I got mine off eBay, if I recall.
Was it expensive?
No, not at all. And I think our esteemed pal Mike Rock sold a copy recently. I think it's like you're going to pay like £5 to £10 for it, possibly on eBay.
Yeah,
well worth it, worth every penny. Okay, lads. So that's number 10. So we're getting into the big hitters now, aren't we? Yep. Really? What's in at number 9, Mike?
So number 9 is a game which placed third in the last indie poll, and has been in as high as 56th place in our top 200 games. And it's a game called Gunlord. by NG Dev Team, which is another game which is incredibly difficult, but really good. Again, Turrican. It's Turrican for the modern age. That's what the game is.
Yeah, I was going to say Turrican. It borrows a lot from that game. What I wasn't expecting when I played it, though, was the way that it mixes up the sort of the genres. Because one minute you're playing Turrican, the next minute you're playing a sort of shmup. You know, the way that it changes up, and it's really nice and refreshing that because you don't know what's going to come next, you know, what the next level's going to be. Obviously, when you played it, you do. But the first time, you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. This is interesting. What's going to be next?
Yeah, for me, the soundtrack really shines with this one. I remember when I first played it, and yeah, like you said, you repeatedly die, but because it is quite a hard game. But I don't know, something about the soundtrack, it just draws you back in again. Yeah, great memories for this, and it is getting a lot harder to find now. But yeah, I'm glad to see it in the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, one of the several NG Dev Team titles that I don't think they've been republished by anyone yet, and so if someone would like to take that up, I'm sure there would be at least some demand.
Mm-hmm. Amazing artwork as well. I know you did an article recently on the blog, Mike, about game artwork.
Yeah,
and to see Gunlord in there was a nice surprise because it is some phenomenal artwork.
Yeah, really good sort of 90s fantasy. Sci-fi artwork, which a lot of indie games have actually. Indie games have pretty decent artwork, to be fair. Especially the German developers, they have really good artwork.
Right, let's move on then. What's in at number 8?
So number 8 is, and we'll get some complaints about this one, but number 8 is the game which came top in 2016. It's Pierre Solar, the formerly Mega Drive RPG. Which was ported to various consoles, including Dreamcast, in a slightly better version, and was incredibly popular when it came out.
Mm-hmm. By Watermelon, right?
By Watermelon, yeah.
Mike, have you got the collector's edition in the big box?
I have not, no. So the collector's edition was ridiculous. I mean, probably the most polished and most professional in terms of extravagant, I suppose, limited edition.
Didn't it come with like a cup and everything?
Yeah, cup.
There's a cup and posters, stickers.
Figures, was it as well, possibly? It's loads of stuff with it, yeah. In a massive box, massive crate.
Yeah, I was very jealous. I remember, again, back in the midst of time, somebody who read the blog sent me a lot of photographs of the collector's edition when they got it. So I put a post up on the blog and just went through everything that was in there, and I was blown away that this was like a Dreamcast indie release. What? Like, Look at all this stuff. It's like a AAA... It's like something you get from Ubisoft, you know, like a big statue and a lot of other junk that you don't need, but actually really well done and really well presented, really high quality. So, yeah, I think that goes for a pretty penny now, doesn't it? The collector's edition on eBay.
Yeah.
Unlike the Ubisoft ones, which you'll find in CX for like 10 quid.
Yeah.
I think this game, perhaps, it was number 1 last time, and maybe it was just because it was newer, and it's been lost a little bit in the sands of time. I don't think really anyone yet has released an RPG that can top it. I know that Orion produced a nice little RPG, but I don't think it was quite on the same level as Pierre Solar.
Sorry, who? Who?
Is it Orion, the French?
Orion.
Orion. It's Orion. It's Orion in this house. Yeah. Anyhow, yeah. I'll move on now, so I'll stop getting bullied.
Orion did make an RPG, which I think also is one of Tom's selections.
It's Orion, actually, Mike.
Sorry.
I think you'll find. Okay then, right, you never know, it might come up later. Let's see. What's in at number 7, Mike?
Number 7 is a game which came 4th last time. A little bit cheeky because actually it's 2 different releases to an extent, but it's basically Rush Rally Racing and Rush Rally Reloaded, which is the exact same game, in honesty, by CDL Team. Released by, I think, every single publisher that has ever published Dreamcast games. Red Spot Games, Josh Prod, Wave Game Studios. I know everyone down the street in the back of a car. But really good, top-down Micro Machines game. Again, it's tough as hell. I think I'm just crap at games, to be honest with you, but it's a tough game. It's nearly in our top 100 of the last poll, I believe, 103rd. Yeah, really good game.
It's a great game. You can also run over a cow, I believe.
You can.
Yes. The first time I saw that, I was like, is that... what? It's a bit quite gory. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, the the humor in it is pretty decent, as you'd expect from Senile Team. I will just, I hate to correct Mike, but I will just going for Reloaded, in that there is actually a fair bit of extra content. Like, I think it's some of the challenges that are in there are new, and I think that if I remember, there's a couple of levels that you unlock later on as well. One of them, you're chasing some aliens around a spaceship and the like.
Isn't that version the one that was released on the Wii, that was then re-released on the Dreamcast?
It's the WiiWare version, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But either way, I mean, they are very similar. There's not a great deal of difference, but great game.
Is that the first instance of a game coming to the Dreamcast first and then being released on a contemporary console because of how popular it was?
Good question.
I think so. The other ones have come since, haven't they? Stormwind came after, and
oh, of course, yeah.
Okay. Well, you never know. We might see Senile Team crop up again soon. What have we got in at number 7, Mike?
Well, number 7 was Rush Rush Rally, so number 6... Let's start again. Number 6 is Shadow Gangs, which came out a couple of years ago. A scrolling beat-em-up in the grand tradition of 90s and 80s scrolling beat-em-ups. And a very, very good game.
Very difficult as well. Not on the Volgar the Viking sort of scale, but I'm yet to make it past level 3, I think. So, quite difficult.
I think weirdly, I'm surprised that actually hasn't polled a little bit higher. But I'm only kind of basing it on the polish of the game. I mean, it's a very, very good-looking Dreamcast game. It's been optimized, to the nth degree. It runs really well on there. They did a really, really good limited edition, which they didn't release too many. I think, to be fair, I think it was under 20 of this. There was a big box collector's edition, which had T-shirt in it, soundtrack, obviously the game, some other bits and pieces. But yeah, it's great. And, I'm very much looking forward to Shadow Gangs 2. They're obviously also working on Shadow Gangs 0, which is for, I think it's Mega Drive as well as Neo Geo. But yeah, I'm honestly surprised this isn't second or third. I thought it would have been a bit higher.
Has Shadow Gangs 2 been confirmed for Dreamcast then, yeah?
Yes, but it's been now put on the back burner slightly to focus on Shadow Gangs 0. I'm not sure why that is, but yeah, it has been confirmed. But yeah, unfortunately, development on it's halted for a little bit longer, unfortunately.
Well, at least that means we've got something to look forward to, maybe in a couple of years' time, and there's plenty to fill the void between now and then.
One last thing, is it the only game on the Dreamcast to feature Freddie Mercury?
Yeah,
it's got to be, right?
That choice of artwork is interesting, isn't
it? I guess, I presume it's like that he looks like Freddie Mercury intentionally, because like in the original like Shinobi, I had like Spider-Man and all these like weird knockoff cameos, didn't you? So I suppose that's the reasoning behind that choice.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is Freddie Mercury. Yeah. But I think it's deliberate, as you say. I mean, and I think also some of the voiceovers in there as well. I can only assume that they're tongue-in-cheek. Okay, so moving on to the top 5 indie games for the Dreamcast. So what's come in at number 5 spot, Mike?
So number 5 is a game called Xenocider, which is a game from Retro Summers, came out a couple of years ago, had been in development for a long time. Old friends of the Dreamcast Junkyard, Retro Summers. The game is very, very cheap to describe the game as Space Harrier, but it takes a lot of inspiration from Space Harrier. There's other elements to it as well. I know other people on this podcast are going to talk about those bits as well, but it's sort of like an endless runner game in most of its stages. It's got an absolute massive amount of depth, and it also has a separate section which is basically Space Harrier in full 3D, which is probably one of the most impressive things ever released in any indie game on a Dreamcast. That's where I'll leave it and everyone else speak about it.
Yes, just to pick up off what Mike said there, it's an into-the-screen sort of shoot 'em up where you play as this cyborg character. You've got tons of enemies coming towards you on the screen. You've got environmental hazards to avoid, power-ups. You can collect little Dreamcasts. There's great amount of really well done video footage. I love the way the sort of mission select screens kind of blend with like FMV into the actual game. Yeah, some of that stuff is on the level of like an officially sanctioned release, I think. Some of that presentation. And like you say, Mike, the extra modes and unlockables, there's loads of like achievements and things that you wouldn't really expect to see in an indie game. So you can unlock things like almost like it's a space shooter going into the screen where you play as a little spaceship. It reminded me quite a lot of Resogun, the sort of the artistic style of it. And yeah, just an overwhelmingly awesome package. And then obviously you've got the collector's edition that comes with a music CD. And great example of a developer creating a bespoke engine for the Dreamcast, then creating their own game with it and putting it to really good use.
Yeah, it really sets a bar for Dreamcast releases, and I think that anyone else that's releasing something should really look to what they've done here. And it can't get enough praise as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised it didn't come in higher, but then again, there's a lot of competition. So we'll see what's come above it. What's come in at number 4, Mike?
So number 4, slightly surprising, is I think our newest game in the list actually, and it is Driving Strikers. Another Wave Game Studios release. And for those who haven't played it, it is, we talked about it already a little bit, but it's, sort of a Rocket League Zero, or a sort of a Rocket League for a Dreamcast. It's great fun. It's basically football with cars.
Yeah. Is it the first new indie game with online capabilities? Yeah.
Yeah, first Dreamcast game, new online Dreamcast game, not revived, in I think it was 25 years.
Amazing.
Was it 20? No, that can't be right. But anyway, whatever the number of years was that we put as the header for my review, we'll edit that in as well. But for a bloody long time,
20 years.
20 years, yeah, that's right.
It really feeds into those two thriving aspects of the Dreamcast, I guess, and that is, the online gaming infrastructure, like Dreamcast Live and the DreamPod, obviously, and they're like, right, we've got these two things, the indie scene and the online scene, let's mash them together, and you get Driving Strikers, right? So it's like a big deal in like quite a few areas, and also it's great to see that it's polled well, because unfortunately this game wasn't out when we did the top 200, so they missed being in that vote. So it's great to see that they've polled well here.
I think it's fair that it's up there. I tried to strike a balance in my review that I did for this, because I think that the online architecture is really what makes it stand out and what makes it as such a step forward for the community. And I hope some others take that on and use it. But I think it's only fair for people who are kind of coming at it, not understanding that. They might feel that, okay, it's a bit slow online when you're using the modem or the DreamPod. There are still a few bugs here and there. But I think if you take that in the context of they're literally having to do all this brand new, and when I say they, sorry, we should really shout out again, it's Luke and Dave who produced this game. So it wasn't the case that they were doing something simple or just porting a game. It's completely brand new work. And the game itself is a lot of fun, but really in multiplayer mode, online or in person. Single player, I can play it for a little while, but it gets a little tedious if you're playing it by yourself.
Yeah, and the game, to be fair, it's come a long way from when they started originally putting out a couple of demos and things like that. The steering at first just did not feel right. It didn't feel natural. It just didn't work. But like you said, it's come on leaps and bounds, and it's a very, very enjoyable multiplayer game. I haven't myself played it via DreamPod or anything like that. I've done obviously same room or couch multiplayer, let's call it, and that's great fun. And it's a really, really good game, and maybe that's going to start setting the standard for bringing online games to the indie scene a bit more, because there is a lack of it. maybe they are the guys who are going to catapult it a little bit more. But there needs to be something that really makes it easy and a lot more affordable to get more people back online on the Dreamcast. It's just not in the reach of most people. DreamPod is great in what it does, but I still think we just need something that literally is plug in, play, go, and it's affordable. Plus, it's also got John Riggs voicing over parts of it, right?
Oh, yeah.
It does. It does have John Riggs.
And
indeed.
a Dreamcast Junkyard logo in one of the levels.
Yes, that's right.
A Dreamcast Junkyard logo. Yeah, of course.
Who are those guys?
Yeah.
Who?
Some hacks.
Blimey.
Work for the Metro, apparently.
Okay, right. We'll see what's come above it then. We're moving into the last three now. So getting close. What's come in at number 3, Mike?
So number 3 is my favourite indie game, and I'm still annoyed it didn't get number 1. However, I will be magnanimous about it and be collected. It's a game called Xenocrisis, which came out in 2020. Bitmap Bureau. The Dreamcast Junkyard has a fairly large... Not large, that's over-egging ourselves a little bit there. We had some input into some of the development of the game. Tom... who knows the developers, did allow it to have twin stick support by lending them their twin sticks. I lent them one of the ASCII pads. It's a great game. Xenocrisis is an absolutely fantastic game. It is a multi-directional shooter. It is incredibly good fun. It is. I've played it on modern platforms and on Dreamcast. The Dreamcast version is superb. It is just absolute gaming bliss. I'd probably put it in my top 5 games of all time on any platform ever. It is an absolutely fantastic game. And also the review of the game, I'll plug my own review this time, that I did on release, is my favourite piece I've ever written because it was genuinely exciting to play. Just a superb game. And what I will say is the top 3 got a lot more votes than anything before it. So... although Driving Strikers got a lot of votes in number 4, Xenocrisis got a lot more than Driving Strikers as well, so it did really, really well. Xenocrisis.
Yeah, I did go traipsing down to the Bitmap Bureau office with the twin stick on my motorbike to give to Mike Tucker, who is obviously one of the guys who's responsible for this game, and also full disclosure, a friend of mine who I see quite regularly. So I don't want to say too much. But it's a really good fun game to play. It's obviously has overtones of things like Smash TV. I know it's been mentioned many, many times, but I just love the setting. I'm a huge fan of the Aliens franchise. So that kind of Marines versus aliens in an off-world colony that's been overrun by xenomorphs is right up my alley. So yeah, and it's great to see the names of the backers from the Kickstarter, included in the game as hostages that you rescue, because it's a nice surprise when you either see yourself or you see somebody that you know while you're playing it. So that's a nice little touch. But yeah, great game.
Yeah.
And of course a weird sort of thing as well connected to Dreamcast, because obviously Mike was also involved in the development of an actual Dreamcast game. I think possibly the only inclusion of any indie game where he also was involved in a game very similar to Xenocrisis, very similar in concept, a game called Giant Killers, which is a football manager game. So a good connection.
Yeah, he was also involved in that cancelled Sheepdog game. I forget the name of
Stampede.
Stampede. That's the one.
Yeah. So, obviously knows Dreamcast development from back in his days working for, was it IO Interactive?
Yeah.
He's got a lot of history with it. And actually has a lot of Dreamcasts as well, funnily enough, probably for testing purposes. But,
Well, there you go. Xenocrisis coming in at number 3. If you do come across any... I think Mike, you're in as a hostage, aren't you?
He is,
I am.
Yeah. And Tom, I think you are, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't seen myself yet, though, weirdly.
If you come across either of those two, don't worry about saving them. Just the aliens, take them. Right, so what has come in as the runner-up then? At number 2, Mike.
So, number 2, the top 2 were very, very close. And in the end, it actually came down to a single vote, which is dramatic. And it's a game which came second in the last poll as well. It can't catch a break, unfortunately. The game is Stormwind, a game which probably needs very little introduction if you know what indie games on Dreamcast are. It is a still absolutely amazing looking game, even though it's 11 years old now. It is fantastic, just a horizontal shooter. Really good game, has loads of little bits extra as well, which sometimes get overlooked. I mean, there's like an easy mode, there's replays which you can do. You can also put the SD card reader in the back, which for a short amount of time seemed like the future of the Dreamcast, but has obviously been superseded somewhat since. Stormwind is an amazing game.
And the highest ranked indie game in the top 200, just to add. It may have only ranked second here, but, to rank above a lot of original Dreamcast games on the top 200 was quite a feat.
I'm genuinely puzzled as to what could be at number one, with Stormwind's at number two. But, yeah, just to reiterate what Mike said, Stormwind, it's a classic. It's a timeless classic. It's so good. Obviously started life on the Atari Jaguar CD, had to get that reference in,
of course,
as a game called Native. And in the Dreamcast release, when you're playing it on, I think it's level 2, when you're going down like a sort of a shaft, like a lift shaft type thing where the screen moves downwards, you get these boxes that fall down. If you pause it at the right moment, you can see the Jaguar logo on the boxes as they fall. So there's a little Easter egg in there as well for you. But yeah, that's not included in the Switch version though, weirdly. But yeah, I've got it on the Switch, got it on the Dreamcast. Just a brilliant game. I love the music as well.
Yeah.
And the sort of the way that the animated FMV backgrounds are kind of incorporated into the polygonal sort of foreground stuff. I think it's polygonal. It might be sprite. Don't quote me. But yeah, it's just a great. And the weapons system where your weapons are tied to your lives, and there's different types of projectiles that you can fire backwards and forwards and all the rest of it. Yeah, it's really, really good game.
Yeah, I just remember when I first got it through the door and put it in, just how blown away I was by the visuals of the game at the time compared to, I can't remember, it might have been Cool Herders or something, the last indie release I had before it. But yeah, it seemed to be just amazing what they achieved with that game. And also, what made me love it as well, made me biased, was that Red Spot Games charm, where I think I got a lollipop or something in the package that came from Germany. So I was biased right from the off.
I remember when the game was first sort of touted as coming out, Aaron Foster, the Gaggerman, who was one of the original members of the blog writing team, he did a series of articles on it because he pre-ordered it, and he was quite excited about getting the little Kraken plush that came with it. And wasn't there a version that came with a little model of the Stormwind ship as well? I seem to remember that.
Yeah. The Windstark 12 version, named after the ship, came with a little ship, which sometimes didn't quite work because it had been printed obviously quite badly. But
have you got it, Mike?
I've got that version. I haven't got the Kraken. It's one of my most desired pieces. I want the Kraken. I want a plush Kraken.
Okay. Well, maybe if anyone's listening to this who has one going spare, get in touch.
Yeah.
Make Mike's dreams, all of Mike's dreams come true.
Please.
And Juranic, if you're listening as well, come back, please.
Yes.
You do have the plush flea, though, Mike, don't you?
I mean, that's my friend. That's my companion for life.
Yeah.
So that's...
And he has also got his life size cut out of Commander Worf.
I do have my Lieutenant Commander Worf. Let's face it. He hadn't been promoted to commander at that point. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Moving on from a list of things Mike has, then I think the time has come for us to reveal the winner of our illustrious poll. This is the moment you've been waiting for, everyone. Mike, can you tell us, please, can you reveal what has topped the poll as the best indie Dreamcast game?
So our winner is a game which had support right from the start. It's had a massive amount of publicity since it's been released, and it's a game which thoroughly deserves it. The game is Intrepid Izzy, which is CNR Team's game released a couple of years ago. It is just an amazing game. I will let other people talk about it, including Lewis, who I know wrote a very detailed and very good review of the game.
Thanks.
Also quoted on the back of the box, if I'm not mistaken, Lewis.
Indeed, he did, yeah.
Right, Intrepid Izzy. Yeah, there's like a lot of things that kind of come with this, other than the fact it's a great game, which we'll get into. But like, it was also the game that introduced us to Wave. I remember I put a little news update on the blog about because obviously this was a Kickstarter project originally. I remember putting that up, and basically these are the releases that are coming out, the physical releases, and one of them was by a company called Wave, and we'd never heard of this company, and I remember reaching out to them for the first time. That was the first time we actually linked with Wave and spoke to them, and this was their first release. And I remember, like you were saying, Mike, there was a lot of publicity. They went around all these retro game stores in the UK to promote this game. That was really cool because it was during lockdown, wasn't it? So the idea that if you could go out the house and go to a retro game store, you could purchase a brand new game in a brick and mortar store. That was amazing. So Wave were obviously part of this release, and also just like this, I think it's almost like the culmination of all the work that Senile Team have put in over the years. I mean, from Beats of Rage to Rush Rally, they are veterans, and so I feel like when you play this game, you can really see the years of what they've been doing coming into like a full release. So, this if anyone's not played this, and you should, it's like a Metroidvania, but maybe in contrast to Metroidvania. It's very colourful, beautiful animation and graphics, and it has we talked about the CNL Team's humour before. Like, it has their trademark humour in it, and I had a lot of fun playing it.
You can clearly see why it's I believe it's Wave's biggest release to date, and still selling copies of it now. Even in a couple local game stores now, you still see a copy of Intrepid Izzy. I'm hoping that's not just the only one and it never sells, but it's a great game. I think I feel like I can see hints of Sonic almost as well, in just colours and kind of the art style, I should say, and the
definitely,
and the soundtrack and things like that. He's hoping maybe we'll see a second one at some point, because they have hinted quite a few times that they would like to do a second one, and when developers are doing that, quite often they're just trying to judge the room.
Water,
they want to see, do people actually want another one? And you would think with the sheer amount that have sold that maybe there will be, but I'm so glad this is number one, and I thought it would be, but I didn't want to say anything. But I'm glad it's got number one for sure.
I've got to be honest, it completely sort of slipped my mind when you said that Sternwind was number two. I was like, what's going to be at number one? Is it Leona's Tricky Adventures? Is it Hermes? Do you know what I mean? What can it be? And then obviously it's obviously Intrepid Izzy, because it's such an iconic game on the Dreamcast. And like you say, Lewis, it's superb Metroid-esque game. I'm loath to use the term Metroidvania because I hate it, but it's superb.
It has like an amazing gameplay loop where Izzy gets these costumes that allow her to have certain powers, and I love that kind of addictive loop in some. There's loads of games like this where you'll be doing a certain level, and maybe you'll beat it after struggling with it for a bit, because it does have a little bit of challenge, but is still quite accessible. And so you'll beat like the area maybe you're stuck on, and she'll find this new ability, and then you'll go, oh wait, I can go back to the bit I saw earlier that was locked off to me. And so, I remember playing it for the review, and I'd say to my now wife, like, let me just do this one bit here, and then I'll be like, hold on, but I've got this thing. I need to go, go unlock that section. So it is really addictive. It's great.
Yeah, and also in that regard, you can complete the game without finding. I think there is at least one of the suits that you don't need to find to complete the game. And likewise, there's lots of things that you can try to do to get 100% completion. So for those of us that are obsessed with doing such things, it actually has quite a lot of depth. So I distinctly remember getting it and then playing it over the course of like a week or so, after work, playing it, saving, looking forward to playing it again. And I think that there are few those types of games are actually quite few and far between when it comes to the Dreamcast indie scene. Like there's loads of really decent games, but a lot of them are kind of they have fairly short gameplay loops. They're kind of arcade based, pick up and play, whereas this had like a clear storyline with progression that you can play over the series of an extended period of time. But yeah, and also finally, one last point on this from me. I remember when it was announced, there were a handful of quite derisory comments about it, the graphics looking, like a Flash game, or and also people, perhaps not being into the kind of cutesy female lead that it had, and I'm just really glad that it's come out number one here. Despite that, I think that's probably quite a minority position. Most people are pretty open-minded, and once you actually play the game, then if you did, for whatever reason, I don't know why you would, but if you had those concerns, you felt you didn't really relate to it much, that those would soon go out the window.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if those kind of like idea about like the way it looked kind of came from an idea that it looked cheap or something like that. I'm obviously not going to put words in people's mouths, but sorry, the last thing I'll say on this is that the game is incredibly polished as well. I think Mike mentioned this in your guide. There is another game that does this, but it has like achievements and stuff. Like, you can unlock achievements and go back to the menu and like look at all these different things you've done. And just I remember putting it in, and this comes from years of my Dreamcast being like crashing and doing all the kinds of things that the Dreamcast hardware does do. I just remember playing it, and it loads, and it's like it's got like I remember the loading screens being quite visual, so when it's when the loading is finished. It's not like it goes to a sort of a blank screen and you're like, is it going to load? Am I going to get into the game? So it is a very polished game. I mean, as you would expect from Senile Team, who have such pedigree in the Dreamcast indie scene.
Indeed. So there we have it. I think we're pretty agreed on that one. Not too controversial that it's come out on top. We do have one last section, though, that we're left to announce, and that is the best developer. So who's come in as best developer for the Dreamcast, Mike?
So we had a pretty tight race again for this one. Number 3 was Duranic. So they're obviously still very much loved for their Stoneman release. Number 2 was actually Reality Jump. So Luke Benstead and David Weigelt, the guys behind Glowing Strikers. I think that shows the wider sort of community respect for that team. And number 1, to tie in with our number 1 game, of course, is Senile Team.
Yeah, baby!
2 games in the top 10. They had 1 just outside the top 25, so Beats of Rage was just outside the top 25 as well. They did well, put it that way.
Yeah, and very well deserved, I think, as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can also hear a few words now from Roll of Senile Team.
On behalf of Senile Team, I'd like to thank everyone at the Dreamcast Junkyard and, of course, everyone who supported us. You're all wonderful human beings, or at least I assume you're human beings, but in any case, you're all wonderful.
So I hope everyone enjoyed those results. And if you didn't, if you feel that something was missed out that should have been in there, then please do send us a ranty comment. By all means, we love any and all engagement. That wraps up today's episode. All we have left to do now is do the outros. So we are the Dreamcast Junkyard. You can find us online at thedreamcastjunkyard.co.uk. We are also kicking around on various social media platforms, including X, which used to be called Twitter. We're at the DC Junkyard. If you would like to help us cover our running costs then please do send us a few quid over at buymeacoffee.com/DC Junkyard. Our wonderful guests today can also be found, I'm sure, on the interwebs. So, Lewis, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at LewisJFC on the website formerly known as Twitter, and yeah, just find me on the Junkyard blog as well.
And Mike?
Yeah, I'm on the Twitter hellscape at Space Turnip. Also, the article to go with this podcast should be live as we speak, or as we speak in the future when it's edited. Yeah.
Okay, Tom.
No, you can't find me on Twitter because I don't use it because it's a hellscape. You can, however, find me on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Tom Charnock. But don't look at it if you don't like novice motorcycle mechanics talking about motorcycles being put back together badly. So just a word of warning there.
Yeah, you can use it as is it ASMR? I don't know anything about motorbikes, but you can just listen to Tom's soothing voice.
You can listen to me dropping screws down into carburetors and swearing. So yeah.
And of course, Alex, where can people find you, mate?
Yes, if you, I'm predominantly on YouTube and Twitter, the Sega Guru, where obviously I showcase a lot of predominantly Indian homebrew and ports for the Dreamcast. I also do cover Mega Drive and Saturn stuff, but predominantly Dreamcast is my love. I also want to say thank you to you guys, obviously, for bringing me on. You guys absolutely smash it with the Dreamcast goodness. I've been following you guys for years, and you've given me the passion to keep doing what I do. So thank you for that. It's been an honour to come on.
That's very nice, Alex. And just to reciprocate, really, I watch your content on YouTube. I occasionally leave a comment. I watched your reviews and looks at new indie releases on things like the Saturn, for example. Great job, and long may your channel continue to be successful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
Well, there we have it, folks. That's all from us today. And we will catch you next time for another episode of the DreamPod.
This is the Dreamcast disc. 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 And is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers. Please stop this disc now.